And let us dive straight in tonight with the latest developments in Stupid Watergate 2. A sequel no one wanted to a sequel no one wanted. If Stupid Watergate was Blues Brothers 2000, this is Blues Brothers September the 11th, 2001. It was a very dramatic week in Stupid Watergate 2, culminating in this news on Friday.
According to the New York Times, President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, is now under federal criminal investigation over his work in Ukraine.
It's true, Giuliani may be under federal investigation, meaning events have finally caught up with his face, which perpetually looks like someone who just found out they're under investigation. And look, this news shouldn't be remotely surprising. On a list of things that Giuliani is likely to be under, federal investigation might even narrowly beat out his own cousin. But the specifics here are incredible, because the investigation is reportedly tied to two of Giuliani's associates who were arrested on Wednesday.
U.S. nationals Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman were charged with illegally funneling foreign donations to political campaigns, including $325,000 to a pro-Trump super PAC.
OK, come on. These two men are just cartoonishly suspicious. I mean, look at them. They look like they're about to sell you a rocket launcher in a Grand Theft Auto game. And if that wasn't suspicious enough, they were arrested at the airport trying to fly out of the country with one-way tickets. And the indictment against them has more amazing details, because it alleges that they funneled foreign money to US political campaigns. And one of the brilliant ways that Fruman apparently tried to evade detection was by misspelling his own name, making contributions in the name of Igor Furman, not Fruman. And if all you're going to do is move your letters around, how about Mr. Go Fun Air? It's not only harder to detect, maybe they won't arrest you at the airport. We can't stop him from flying. He's Mr. Go Fun Air. In any case, thanks largely to their political contributions, these two gained entry to Republican inner circles. Here is a photo one of them posted, captioned "Power Breakfast with Don Jr., whose very presence alone disqualifies this meal from being a power breakfast. At best, it's a neglected by power since childhood brunch. At best. And here they are with Trump and Pence at the White House. And it's going to be pretty difficult for Giuliani in particular to distance himself here, because he reportedly had lunch with them just hours before they were arrested. And it is not hard to find evidence of their relationship online.
This video from 2018 shows them laughing it up with Giuliani at the Trump Hotel.
See you in Ukraine soon.
Just look at those guys. Laughing, drinking, ties undone. They're like the Rat Pack if the Rat Pack was deeply uncool and had even more suspected ties to organised crime. And while there is still much more that we need to know here, it's incredible how much you can already piece together just from information in the public domain. For instance, we know Giuliani wanted career diplomat Marie Yovanovitch removed as ambassador to Ukraine because he felt she was blocking his anti-Biden campaign. Igor and Lev also wanted her gone. Enter Congressman Pete Sessions. Igor and Lev donated a bunch of money to him, and at a meeting, Parnas apparently told him the ambassador was disloyal to Trump and that she'd been bad-mouthing our president. We know this meeting happened not from some unnamed whistleblower, but because Parnas publicly posted these pictures with Sessions captioned "Hard at work." That same day, Sessions wrote to Mike Pompeo telling him he had evidence from close companions that Yovanovitch had spoken about her disdain for the current administration. And sure enough, Trump eventually removed her, even bragging about it after the fact.
In the July phone call with the Ukrainian president that sparked this impeachment inquiry, Trump called Yovanovitch bad news, later saying she was going to go through some things.
Wow. That sounds pretty ominous, although it is possible that by go through some things, he just meant continue to live in this Kafkaesque nightmare where Donald Trump is president of the United States, in which case, yeah, all of us are going through some things right now, buddy. Same. So these two goons allegedly used money from foreign sources to help start a whisper campaign to get a US ambassador removed. And it's frankly amazing they were taken seriously by anyone, given the obvious red flags. The company one of them paid Giuliani through was called, and this is true, Fraud Guarantee, which is essentially the equivalent of owning an exterminating company called Mouse Promise. See? Our promise is there will not be mice. Mouse Promise. And look, as ever, it's hard to say what will happen going forward here, but it's frankly not looking great for Giuliani, especially after the lukewarm endorsement he got on Friday.
Well, I don't know. I haven't spoken to Rudy. I spoke to him yesterday briefly.
He's a very good attorney, and he has been my attorney. Yeah, sure.
Oh, that is not good, Rudy. Because history suggests that sooner or later Trump will abandon him, at which point, to paraphrase his maybe client, Giuliani is probably going to be going through some things. But for now, let's move on to Hong Kong, the semi-autonomous region of China that's ostensibly free, but kind of not. Like Candy Crush, or this plate of spaghetti sitting unguarded in a field. It's tempting, but nah, something doesn't line up here. It's too easy. For nearly 5 months now, Hong Kong has experienced the largest pro-democracy demonstrations in its history, and China has been clamping down hard on businesses expressing support for the protesters, and this week saw another flare-up.
The NBA is trying to minimize damage after an international incident.
It all started with this tweet from Houston Rockets GM Daryl Morey. Fight for freedom, stand with Hong Kong.
Fresh backlash from the communist regime in Beijing. China's state TV said it won't broadcast or stream NBA preseason games in China. And at least 2 major Chinese retailers have pulled Houston Rockets merchandise from their websites.
It's true, the Chinese government upended the NBA's business in that country over a single tweet from this guy. And it's just absurd to get that angry at Daryl Morey for supporting pro-democracy protests. You want to be angry at him? How about the fact he traded away power forward Marquise Chris as part of a 3-team deal with the Kings and the Cavaliers back in February? Chris is 6'10", with a 7-foot wingspan, plays way above the rim and can mix it up in the post. Yes, granted, he's had his issues on the Suns, I'm not denying that. But he's the exact type of athletic big man that could have balanced out Westbrook and Harden, especially when he's coming off the bench for PJ Tucker. What I'm saying is, Daryl, your tweet about Hong Kong was totally fine, nothing to apologise for there, but when it comes to Marquise Chris, you fucked up, Daryl! And I'm not even a Rockets fan. I'm just a fan of competent mid-season roster moves. But the fact is, the NBA has put itself in a tight spot here because it's been aggressively expanding into China with a $1.5 billion digital partnership with a Chinese tech company, to say nothing of NBA China, the league's business arm, managing events there, which is worth more than $4 billion alone. And they've worked hard to appeal to the Chinese market, as you can tell by this ad produced just last year.
Kung Hei Fat Choi. Happy New Year.
Gong Hei Fat Choi.
Happy New Year.
Wan Shu Ru Yi. Wish you luck in the year of the dog.
Ni hao, Happy Chinese New Year.
Hey, my name is Lance Stevenson. I want to say Happy Chinese New Year's. Woo!
Come on. There's just nothing more cringeworthy than watching someone forced to engage in promotional bullshit to appease the whims of their parent company. And speaking of parent companies, that actually reminds me. Have you heard about HBO Max? Looking to add another app and monthly charge to watch things? HBO Max has you covered. It's going to have all your favourites. Reruns of The Big Bang Theory, reruns of Friends, reruns of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You can pay for all of those through HBO Max. HBO Max. It's not HBO, it's just TV. And while Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, has stood by Morey, it has been disappointing to see others like ESPN's Stephen A. Smith heavily criticising his tweets for jeopardising the league's bottom line. And before you watch this, if you've never heard Stephen A. Smith talk before, just know this: he tends to be loud, wrong, and take pointlessly dramatic pauses.
You don't just think about yourself when you act. That's what boys and girls do. That's what children do. Grown-ups, adults, people who understand what it's like to build something, to have something, and to be responsible for people other than themselves, they get that you don't just speak willy-nilly. Run your mouth without any thoughts of the consequences coming down the pike.
Again, if you're not a sports fan and you're just now seeing Stephen A. Smith for the first time, let me address a few things quickly. 1, I'm sorry. 2, yes, he's always like that. And 3, no one knows why. But what Smith is essentially doing there is arguing that casually turning a blind eye to human rights violations is okay if doing so is in your company's best interest. And that feels fundamentally wrong, especially given that some teams now seem to be enforcing Chinese restrictions on speech here in the US.
Sam Walks and his wife held free Hong Kong signs at last night's Sixers game against a team from China. But when Walks started yelling free Hong Kong, he was escorted away by security.
Wow. Those fans were deemed too outspoken and obnoxious for professional sports in Philly. In Philly! A city where fans have booed Santa Claus, punched police horses, and intentionally vomited on an 11-year-old girl. And look, that is troubling, because the NBA, to its credit, and notably unlike other leagues, has generally accepted that its employees are people and people have opinions. What makes this situation different is clearly money. And the reality is here, the NBA can either have a commitment to free speech or they can have guaranteed access to the Chinese market, but they cannot have both. This will not be the last time that they'll be forced to choose, and my fear is that they'll be willing to trade one for the other, which would be the worst trade since Daryl Morey shipped out Marquise Chris. I'm with you 100% on Hong Kong, Daryl, but that was fucked up. And now, this.
And now, farewell, Chef Smith. You were always too weird for where you worked.
Wow! Would you look at that? It's a total eclipse of the sun. If I put this here and my phone here, I have a total eclipse of the phone.
Watch True Blood. It's the last week. Are you going to watch True Blood this weekend?
I'm not a True Blood fan.
You are crazy. Pop-Tarts now has a store in Times Square. Pop-Tarts. I say we bring back the porn stores. Do you think he's aware he's wearing mom jeans? Because he is.
He's wearing jeans, and for him...
He's wearing mom jeans, Carl. It's 2012.
You have a little chapstick fetish, don't you?
Fetish? Well, I need you to Google the word and then realize that is not what I have. Do you watch that show True Blood? True Blood. In the True Blood, of course, that was a scene from the HBO show True Blood, the best show ever. You have DVR?
Yeah, well, like, yeah.
You should record the True Blood.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And now you know the news. For this Monday, May the 9th, 2011, I'm a silly little catfish.
Moving on. For our main story tonight, I'd like to talk about the weather. And I mean all of it. The hots, the wets, the whooshes, the burrs, and of course, the flashy, flashy boom booms. Predicting the weather accurately is a multi-billion-dollar industry that can affect businesses and literally save lives. So there is a lot of pressure on weather forecasters, which might explain why they sometimes snap.
I want you guys to say, wow, that's great news. It's going to be 60 on Friday. Well, I mean, what do you want me to do? Lie to you? I'll put 70 every day next time. Here's some wind, here's some temperature, 20s. Feels like 19, or feels like 70, I don't know. 47, partly cloudy, southwest breeze 10 to 15. Here's a 60, I don't know if that's good enough for you guys. Get excited, maybe I'll disappoint you with the 7-day here in a few minutes.
I honestly wish all local news was delivered like that. A gas station got robbed, that's not my fucking fault. In traffic, there should be no delays in getting you home to your sad lives and your dumpy, ugly kids. And in sports, any athlete on any team could fuck your spouse if they wanted to. That's the news. Suck on this one, sit on that one. And look, maybe you don't get your weather from local news. Maybe you use an app, like the one that came with your phone, or Dark Sky, or Weather Underground, or from places like the Weather Channel or AccuWeather. If you're a New Yorker, you might even get your weather from New York One's Twitter account. And if you don't, you absolutely should, because their actual forecast for the first of this month was, October got off to a warm start today, enjoy the month. It's the last good one for NYC until May, the rest are trash. Which is excellent. But look, wherever you get your weather from, if you live in the US, your forecast would not exist without the National Weather Service. It's a subset of its parent agency, NOAA, and it's an absolutely incredible government service generating essential information. But unfortunately, it may be under serious threat. So tonight, much like two colleagues in an elevator, let's talk about the weather. And let's start with the fact the National Weather Service harvests a huge amount of data every day, and all the other private weather services you can possibly think of are dependent on that data to make their own predictions. Here's one National Weather Service meteorologist pointing exactly that out.
All the forecast, warnings, and data that's available from the National Weather Service is there free of charge to anyone. Even though you don't know our names or see our faces most of the time, those products and services that you see almost every day likely originated from the National Weather Service office.
Yeah, and he's absolutely right. Think of it like this. National Weather Service data is to a weather forecast what fresh Wolverine meat is to Hormel chili. You can't make one without the other. It's the dominant ingredient there. The National Weather Service also works in tandem with organisations all over the world through the World Meteorological Organization, where countries share essential weather data on a free and unrestricted basis. This actually works out very well for the US. We receive 3 times more data back from our partners than we give them, and we've really benefited from that in the past. For instance, in 2012, the US model initially had Hurricane Sandy heading out to the ocean, while the European model showed it making a sharp left turn and hitting the east coast. Which it did. Of course it did. And because we had that early warning, countless lives were saved. So virtually the entire world participates in a weather observation system that most people have never heard of, and that private companies benefit greatly from. Which is not to say the companies don't add value here, because they definitely do. Among other things, when a local news station subscribes to, say, AccuWeather, it gets their state-of-the-art graphics packages. That's something that's been a big part of their brand since at least the 80s.
Whatever you need, AccuWeather has it. Every day, you can select from thousands of award-winning graphics, satellite and radar images, graphics that are at the cutting edge of design and accuracy. You'll know about the worst weather, like this nasty Christmas Eve in Bradford, Pennsylvania, or this blizzard in Lone Tree, Wyoming. Trivia questions can help hold your audience with tantalizing facts. When the weather is in the news, you can be on top of it with special graphics like this one of Chernobyl.
Whoa! Fun Chernobyl graphic, AccuWeather. That looks like a screenshot from the world's saddest Nintendo game, where the levels you progress through are stages 1, 2, 3, and 4 cancer. And to this day, the private sector is on the cutting edge of dressing up weather data. One of AccuWeather's main competitors, the Weather Channel, now regularly produces spectacular and pointless graphics to dramatise severe weather.
And the semi might break through the ice, then we start to run into trouble. You need that to support the weight of a man.
And there can be extensive power outages. Airline missiles. Oh!
Holy shit! Let's all just be thankful that those graphics that advanced were not around during Chernobyl, but companies clearly don't just provide graphics. Some have their own data collection systems and can use them to augment the Weather Service data and narrowly tailor forecasts for specific clients. For example, they could tell a trucking company what roads will be safest to drive on ahead of winter storms. And just listen to Joel Myers, founder and CEO of AccuWeather, as he provides another particularly vivid example.
Eddie Vedder was doing a concert in Chicago. Live Nation uses our service. We gave them a warning. He said, we just heard from AccuWeather, we need to clear the field. They did. 20 minutes later, with everybody out of harm's way, a severe lightning storm hit. It struck the stage, actually, right where he had been standing.
Wow! He's claiming AccuWeather saved Eddie Vedder's life. I guess that's what Eddie was talking about when he famously said, and I quote, "Brr, brr, I'm still alive. Brr, brr, I'm still alive." Yeah. But Myers actually makes a pretty good case there for the value of private weather companies. Making sure Eddie Vedder doesn't get struck by lightning is simply not something the National Weather Service has the bandwidth to do. So, the relationship between the public and the private sector is mutually beneficial. In fact, sometimes the Weather Service even buys data from private companies. But there can be tensions, because the private sector is, by its nature, inclined to try and grab attention. Like when AccuWeather rolled out its groundbreaking 45-day forecast, despite the fact most experts agree any forecast beyond 7 to 10 days is unreliable, and one even called it a joke. And it gets worse. For instance, it is the National Weather Service that names tropical storms, and they name them to signal that they are important. If a storm gets a name, like Sandy or Irene, then you know you've got to pay attention. Now, they don't name winter storms, because winter storms ebb and flow much more, so naming them could inflate their importance or eventually cheapen naming storms altogether, which is why it bugged the shit out of the Weather Service when the Weather Channel suddenly started doing this.
This season, the Weather Channel is naming major winter storms.
The list includes names like Athena, Draco, and Magnus.
Right. And yes, look, those names fucking rule, obviously. I'm not disputing that, but the point is, naming them was a bad idea, especially if, as they did, you call one Janus without, say, considering what would happen if a forecaster stood in front of one of those letters. Because you've got a problem on your hands, don't you? Hey, honey, the news is saying anus is getting bigger and it's going to be dumping all over us for the next 3 days. But a bigger source of friction has been the private sector's sense that they might be better off if the National Weather Service did slightly less. One notable skirmish came 15 years ago after the National Weather Service made its website more user-friendly, and Joel Myers' brother, Barry Myers, who was then the company's EVP, expressed his serious frustration.
The National Weather Service recently decided to more aggressively share its data directly with taxpayers. But not everyone is in favor of its more accessible website.
We work very hard every day competing with other companies, and we also have to compete with the government.
Well, hold on. Do you, though? Do you have to compete? Or is the government what makes your industry possible in the first place? Because without their data, every AccuWeather forecast would just be, fuck if I know. In fact, that same year, AccuWeather supported a bill in Congress that could have prevented the Weather Service from doing anything a private company does, like providing daily forecasts or putting content on its website. Now, the bill failed, which is good, because what you do not want is a paywall system of weather where only paying customers can find out if they're about to drive into a tornado. And I'm not even making up that worst-case scenario. It's basically AccuWeather's sales pitch. During that same interview where Joel Myers claimed that he'd saved Eddie Vedder's life, he shared an anecdote about a client, a railroad company, that pays AccuWeather to give it reports about anything affecting its trains. Now, this is subtle, but see if you can pick up on a problem here.
Union Pacific, we told them that a tornado was heading to a spot. 2 trains stopped 2 miles apart. They watched the tornado go between them. Unfortunately, it went into a town that didn't have our service, and a couple dozen people were killed. But the railroads did not lose anything.
What the fuck did you just say? That is a weird focus on the safety of a railroad over human life. That's a man who read Anna Karenina and came away thinking it's a story about a woman who mildly inconvenienced a train. Now, while people did die in that tornado, it was actually an example of the warning system working well. Because while, yes, AccuWeather did inform their client, Union Pacific, the National Weather Service also warned the town just a few minutes later, giving residents their time to seek shelter. But what Myers is doing there is marketing AccuWeather as indispensable for public safety, which, thanks to the current strength of the National Weather Service, it isn't. Freely shared information has tremendous, potentially life-saving value, although at times his brother Barry has argued otherwise. Remember how our partners in Europe were able to help us prepare for Hurricane Sandy? Just listen to how he described that.
Of special focus during Superstorm Sandy was the ECMWF so-called European model, which did a better job at some points in the storm track than U.S. models did. Relying on other countries for better weather models places America in a weak and subservient position.
Wait, cooperation makes America weak and subservient? That is a viewpoint that would make for a tantalising bit of AccuWeather trivia. Who lost World War II? Britain for accepting help. So it is just crucial that whoever runs the National Weather Service is someone who A, sees the obvious benefit of international cooperation, and B, can stand up to the potential pressures of the private sector, and particularly Joel and Barry Myers. And at this point, you can probably guess what's coming.
President Trump nominating the AccuWeather CEO, he's Barry Myers, and President Trump wants him to be the Undersecretary of the National Weather Service. It's an interesting nomination.
Yes, it is. In fact, you can even say it's incredibly predictable because everything Trump does is designed to destroy government from the inside. The National Weather Service is a terrible government agency to put in the hands of a businessman. And while Myers has stepped down from AccuWeather and divested his stake in the company, it is still very much a family business, with his son-in-law and wife being employed there in recent years, and his 2 brothers still serving as CEO and COO of the company. And yet, during his confirmation hearing, Myers insisted that wouldn't be a problem.
I've made it clear to my brothers, in fact, jokingly, I explained to them that we may see each other at Thanksgiving dinner and we can talk about football and family things, but we cannot talk about Noah.
Really? Really? You won't talk about the thing that could vastly enrich the family business at Thanksgiving? Well, conveniently, Thanksgiving is now exactly 45 days away, so allow me to make a 45-day forecast. Bullshit! And it is worth asking here, why, aside from the obvious, would Barry Myers want this job? If you're thinking, well, maybe he's just a weather nerd who's always wanted to be at the source of all the information, he's not that. A few years ago, he told the Wall Street Journal, "I'm not a meteorologist," and that, as a young man, I knew meteorology was not what I wanted to do. It's also not like he's hoping to parlay this job into a future lobbying gig on K Street. He's a 76-year-old multi-millionaire. So, he has no passion for the subject matter, and his family company is, as he himself has argued, a direct competitor to the agency he's been tapped to run. And if that weren't disqualifying enough, there is one more concern hanging over his nomination.
The Labor Department investigation into AccuWeather found multiple sexual harassment claims were ignored by executives. It says women who complained feared retaliation.
Right. The investigation said the company had a severe and pervasive harassment problem. And while the company denies the allegations, they also chose not to fight them. And the crazy thing here is, Myers has been Trump's nominee for 2 years now. But he hasn't been in the job because the Senate has been sitting on his confirmation. Trump's already had to resubmit his nomination twice, and if Myers isn't confirmed by the end of this year, he'll have to do it again. Which, why? Why not find another guy? Any other guy? Other than, of course, the fact that for that to happen, Trump would have to do stuff, know stuff, and think workplace harassment is a bad thing, and none of us should be holding our breath on that. Besides, it has been easy for Trump to stick by Myers because hardly anyone has been paying attention to this issue, which is understandable, but we really should be. And I might actually know a way to help here, because what better way to illustrate an abstract threat than by learning from the company that since the 80s has perfected turning dry information into state-of-the-art entertainment. So please, if you will, come with me. Hi there. I would like to issue a very important warning for the DC area. According to our patented 1,000-day forecast model, Superstorm Barry is going to cause significant harm to the National Weather Service. As you can see, it originated over here at AccuWeather headquarters and has been gravitating towards NOAA for nearly 2 years now. If it makes landfall, our model suggests there could be significant damage. I'm talking mass reindeer suicide, sliding Santa off a roof damage. That's a lot. Because we do not want the whole country to be like Eddie Vedder, in a position where, unless we pay AccuWeather, the next thing you know, bang! We're not alive! Boo! Boo! We're not alive! Boo! What I'm saying is, Superstorm Barry hitting the National Weather Service could cause a massive data freeze, while, unfortunately, over at AccuWeather, there's going to be around a 95% chance of him making it rain. That is our show. Thank you so much for watching. We're off next week.